And Greg looked at me and said, Randy, no one runs out of money. And we went back and forth on that quite a bit. Well, Michael Kitces did some interesting research about this whole scare that you're going to run out of money. I'll set this up by saying he went to every year of the stock market from 1870 to today. And he said, if you had $1 million and he put it in those years' terms as well, inflation at 3%, and you take a 4% withdrawal on your money, and your retirement's going to last 30 years. Every year from 1870 until today. That had to be a lot. And Greg, what they found was what you've said, is a lot of people end up with more money than what they started with. It's pretty amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, there's catastrophic things. There's helping out your kids. You get over a barrel and you maybe dump some money into your kids that need help for whatever reason. You have a debilitating illness that really eats up. You have a dementia, Alzheimer's early in life. Those type of things are real risks. And I don't want to, build an entire industry and model on an exception. Listen, we know the numbers. It's not arguable that people by and large end up with, if not running out of money, with more money than when they started, as he's shown with all these studies and all these percentages and all this math. To me, I wanted to take it to a different level. I didn't want to make this a math problem. I wanted to make it a life problem, actually a life solution, which is like, what if I could trick people into spending more money? What if I could trick people to enjoying their life more? And by trick, you know what I mean. I'm not really going to try to trick you, but I'm trying to persuade you. I'm trying to influence you to show you you're safe, you're not going to run out of money, and you should have a lot more fun with your retirement. And the only way I could do that was to forecast people's money. And that's what our income forecast does. If you get a complimentary roadmap, we actually build you your first one at no cost, showing you if you spent and received what you did last year, and we factor in some inflation, 5% growth, a simple 5% growth rate. What's your balance in 25 years? Randy, it's amazing to show people that they're safe. And then when you actually take that and give them permission to go and have some more fun with their money, they do it. I mean, that's the whole idea of retirement, isn't it? Is to enjoy your life savings, not to sit there and stare at it or be afraid that you're going to run out of money or fear-monger your way through it, which seems to be the financial industry's MO for the last 40 years, which is, I don't know, man, cost of bacon, Randy. Cost of bacon's going up. You better not do anything. You're like, what are you talking about? Like, I know pizza's an extra $10. Go out and you're still going to be all right. You're still safe. And the cool part about our income forecast, Randy, is we update it every year. So it builds confidence that even when you have that big spending year and then your money still gets bigger, you say, I can do more. Yeah, you can do more. And if you have a guide that gives you permission and empowers you to live more of your retirement years the way that you dreamt about, it's exciting. I think that's why Golden Reserve is growing so much. I think we may be one of the few people, I'm not sure, that are out there telling people to do more and showing them that they're safe and giving them permission to go out and live that best retirement and build those memory dividends. And it starts with the roadmap for retirement, Randy, by showing them what's at risk and then showing them that income forecast tool really gives them both sides of the coin of what's at risk. And here's how you enjoy your money. And it's a starting point to hopefully get them going in the right direction in retirement.
Greg, what's that muscle car that you bought? That cool car that you bought? What is that?
Randy, I have a 70 454 Chevelle. My kids love it. We cruise all the time.
All right. So that's what I wanted to get to. Everybody in their mind probably has a dream car, whether it's a Corvette or a Shelby or what Greg is describing there. Does it make any sense to have that car in your life and then leave it in the garage all the time? No. You want to take it out and drive it and enjoy it. That's what people are doing by not spending their money in retirement. They're leaving their muscle car in their garage. Go out and enjoy it. Give us a call. Let's talk about you enjoying your money in retirement. We've got all this research here that says people retire with money, and at the end of their retirement, they have 5 times more money than they did when they started.
Vroom, vroom, Randy. Vroom, vroom.
Get out there and enjoy your muscle car, will you? Whatever your muscle car is in your retirement. Give us a call. Let's sit down and build that plan. We call it a roadmap for retirement. It's getyourroadmap.com. Greg has been talking about the roadmap. And when you think about your retirement, you've heard these people talk about buckets of money. You've got a bucket, a short-term bucket, long-term bucket, whatever. And the hole in your bucket. The hole in your bucket is you taking money out of your retirement funds, which is the right thing. But how big is that hole? Sometimes there's a bigger hole and other things are leaking out. And that means we're going to talk a little bit about fees here. Now, I've got a couple of people here that you probably know, Warren Buffett and Tony Robbins. Here's what Warren Buffett talks about when he says about fees.
Costs really matter in investments. If returns are going to be 7 or 8% and you are paying 1% for fees, that makes an enormous difference in how much money you have on retirement.
All right. So how much difference does it really make? Here's Tony Robbins and talking about just 1% in fees.
1% in fee, because of the compounding over time, costs you 10 years of retirement income. The average person thinks they're paying less than 1% or nothing, and they're paying 3.1%. That's 30 years of fees.
All right. So when I introduced this topic at the beginning of the show, Greg went, yawn, because people don't think about this. But Greg, if I'm going to lose 10 years of retirement money because of something that's going on in the background, that's got my attention. So talk to me a little bit about what the fee analysis does in our roadmap.
I will. But can I talk about Tony Robbins for a second and Warren Buffett?
Sure.
All right. Warren Buffett's fine. Like he's really rich. And, people sensationalize his little sound bites. When we hear these statements and these platitudes, I mean, they're great for like bumper stickers, but he's a trillionaire. He's not a trillionaire. He's a billionaire, but he's like hundreds of billions in Berkshire Hathaway and all these things. So it's like, it's just like the relatability is kind of goofy. It's like, it would be like Mahomes trying to teach me how to throw a football. It's like, hey, Greg, you got to do this, this, and this. And then you run around. I'm like, yeah, dude, I don't have the goods to do those things. And I think that's a little bit how Warren Buffett's advice is kind of sensationalized. And so let's talk about fees, Randy. So if you go to smartassets.com, let's really talk about real fees. It's not theoretical. Let's talk about real fees. Smart Asset did a study this year. The average fee for $1 million account is 1.17%. 1.17%. And that's a lot. That's $11,700 coming out of your account every year. And I think that's troubling. And there's graduated fees. It could be more. If you look, we talked about Edelman and we've talked about Fisher and we've talked about Edward Jones. All of those fees are more. If we look at the advisor fees. Now, this is the tricky part. Most people say that and they're like, oh, okay, 1%, cool. But what they don't realize, Randy, is that that's half the story. Half the story is the number you know. The other half of the story is the number you don't know, or you probably don't know. And let's start off with actively managed mutual fund. So what is an actively managed mutual fund? Think of American Funds, PIMCO. This is a fund of funds. This is a mutual fund that owns a bunch of equities. It can own other mutual funds. It can own a lot of things. The average fee, according to Atlas Capital this year, is between 0.76 and 1.08%. You know what that means? That means your cost just doubled. You're paying your advisor, and then the investment they sold you costs the same amount. So now you're in the twos. If you're playing the averages, you're at 2%. If you have actively managed mutual funds and an advisor paying 1%, that's just 2%. So $1 million account, let's call it 20 grand coming out. Now, what about other investments? If you're really in a bad place, maybe your financial advisor sold you a variable annuity. According to Schwab and Nationwide, the average all-in variable annuity cost range between 2 and 3%.
Yeah.
So what happened now? Well, you just quadrupled your investment costs. So now you're paying $30,000 or $40,000, $30,000 or $40,000 a year for a variable annuity and your advisor. Have you thought through that? Is that where you wanted to be in retirement? Is that the kind of hole in the bucket you thought of? Do you even know what you're paying them? There's some other things that you're seeing a lot of. Everybody's going to say, what about index funds? According to obviously a lot of the different data on Schwab and in Bloomberg that I looked up, index funds are cheaper. We're looking at 0.2% compared to 1%, 0.2%. So it's 4 or 5 times as economical down to 0.05%. Some of those Schwab ETFs that we come across are 0.05%. That is 20 times cheaper than an actively managed mutual fund. Is that the right fit for you? I don't know, but it costs a lot less. It doesn't have to perform as well. Randy, if you really put apples to apples, you look at ETFs, we hear about ETFs a lot. Bloomberg had a study saying the average ETF fund is about 0.65 to 0.5%. The sample sizes can vary, obviously, depending on what they're grabbing. That can move a lot. But, that gives you an idea of the type of costs that come up. And I think the reason we built the fee filter, Randy, and why it's such a powerful tool is we take the curtain and we pull it back and say, all right, you may know what you're paying your advisor, but you have no idea what you're paying in your investments. I know that. We've talked to people for 15 years. No one has any idea the hard dollar account or the hard dollar amount coming out of their accounts. So our fee filter, our fee analysis report breaks it down in dollars, what you're paying your advisor, and what you're paying for every investment in your portfolio, and how does that investment perform? So you can see, is there a correlation for the things I'm paying more for? Are they performing better? Because you're willing to pay more if you get more, right? It's like, all right, I'm paying more, I'm getting more, I'm adding a net positive. But if I'm paying more and getting less, or paying more and getting the same as something that's cheaper, I probably don't like that investment as much. So this gets overlooked. It's all about just how much something grew, but not how much it cost. So this is the ultimate tool that we do for everybody. You give us your statements. By the way, your financial advisor will never know we did it. Shh, don't tell anybody. All we need is the last statement. We can push this through our software, and it'll show you how each investment performed and what the cost was. And then we can break down what you're paying your advisor in dollars, and we give you a total amount. So I know a lot of times it's easy to say, I pay 1%. I'm like, well, how much is that? They're like, I don't know. I don't know what it applies to. But 1% feels small. All right, well, cool. Well, do you want to know that you're paying $20,000, $40,000, $30,000 on $1 million account? That feels like a big deal, because over the course of a decade, that could be $200,000, $300,000, $400,000. Over the course of a retirement, 30 years, Randy. I mean, we're talking $500,000, $1 million that could
Big
end
number.
up going not to your kids or your spouse or your grandkids. I mean, it means something. So if you wanted to do that, it's part of every roadmap we build. There's obviously a bunch of parts of the roadmap that we put together at no charge, no cost, no obligation. We do it because we want to help retirees, of course. And hopefully, even if you end up not using us, at least you have the right data to make better decisions in retirement. That's the ultimate goal. And when we do that, Randy, I think a lot of people have different reactions. But I think it's important that you pull that curtain back and understand what is coming out of your accounts every year is a great place to start when it comes to your retirement dollar.
Throughout your life, think about the purchases that you make, be it something you're going to buy or a service that you're going to buy. You're looking for best price and you're looking for good value. Why wouldn't you do that in your retirement with your retirement dollars and with your choice of financial advisor? That's why we call this show Fire Your Financial Advisor. We think it's worth another look at this industry to see how it's put together and how Golden Reserve is doing it differently. Well, we are here to talk about what's going on in your life when it comes to your retirement. And we don't do this very often, but Greg, over the last, 3 weeks or so, there has been so much emphasis on interest rates and Jerome Powell and the economy and the stock market and the CPI and the PPI and all this. Can you make any sense of this? Does this mean anything to the people who are listening to us right now?
No. It doesn't. It doesn't make a lot. I mean, that's the short answer is no. This is a bunch of gibberish. Like everyone, they seem to be highly politicized. I mean, I think all of us can put our finger in the air and feel the winds. Like, I think it's better to have kind of a reactionary, who you know, what you're seeing, like use your own common sense. But, employment numbers, May, June, July, and August revisions show, about 20,000 jobs added per month. That's not great. That's not great. So that's something that is a little concerning. PPI, which is the producer price index, talks about the costs. That's slightly down. I guess that's good. Maybe not.
Yeah.
I don't know. But, things are a little cheaper, which I think is, not a terrible thing. And then inflation went up a little bit in August, about 0.2% from 2.9 to 2.7. What that means is your guess is good as mine, right? Like, the CPI has so many things removed from it, so many things added to it. It's such a macro tool, but it does drive, I think, what's going to happen with interest rates. I think if they see inflation starting to creep up, the chances of them cutting rates, I think that's their concern. If they cut the rates too much, inflation takes off again. So that's been Powell's barometer, and it probably should be, right? He's in a tough spot. He's getting a lot of pressure from the administration to cut rates because they think that's going to springboard a little bit more growth. But at the end of the day, he's got to operate independently and do what he thinks right. Unfortunately, I think we're still paying for the sins of the last 10 or 15 years. I think we've made some really not sound financial decisions, paying off wars. There's a lot of, free money at kind of the COVID dollars that really kind of filled the market with dumb money. It's just one of those things. A lot of these economists have never experienced 0% interest rates, and they've never experienced influxes of capital like the COVID years. For them to get their hands around what the short-term, mid-term, and long-term effects economically of these realities is really hard. But to me, Randy, all of this are things that you should think about as a retiree. Not like you don't have to be involved and be reading white papers unless you're a nerd. But if you're not a nerd and you just want to know what's going on with your retirement dollars, I think there is some, headwind ahead of us. I think we had a lot of tailwind. Now that the stock market's still doing great. So it's kind of like one of those things where your money's going up. It's hard to kind of pump the brakes. And I think that's where the cautionary tale of everyone, back in, 2000 or 2008 or 2022, or beginning of this year. How did you feel, when things kind of got goofy? And I always caution people, like, you should take the risks that you need in life and don't speed if you don't have to.
Well, economy goes in cycles, and right now they're talking about us slowing just a little bit. Hiring is slowing. Economy may be slowing. Doesn't mean we're going into a recession, but it certainly is something to sit down and talk about when it comes to your meeting about your retirement. What if the market starts not giving us what we need, where do we get what we need as far as income is concerned and things like that? It's certainly something to talk about. What we do is give you that meeting. It's called a roadmap for retirement. And you can give us a call. You can give us a look on our website. Getyourroadmap.com is our website where you can start. All right. So year-end meetings. I mean, the year flies. Once we get through Halloween, it goes to Thanksgiving, and then we're in Christmas, and there's banquets, and there's get-togethers, and it just is nuts. So what I'm saying is now is not a bad time to sit down and have your year-end meeting about your retirement. And whether you're a client of Golden Reserve or not, this might be a really good time because, Greg, there's a window that closes on December 31st. There's a window that closes on April 15th. So there's some things that we need to talk about before the end of the year. What are those things? What are those meetings looking like right now with your clients? Tell me about a meeting that's happening right now talking about those topics.
So I think there's two tax opportunities for the retiree. There's tax opportunities for a lot of business owners and other things that we're not going to dive into for purposes of this show. That's just about you, the retirees. But when it comes to tax planning for your prototype retiree, the people that we work with, let's say $500,000 to $3 million saved, and they're trying to navigate, and usually a large portion of that is in IRA dollars. Now we talk at length about the first one. So I'm going to make it quick. We talk about IRA planning all the time. We talk about how it's your biggest tax liability for almost all retirees because you haven't paid income tax on it yet. It's this huge account and you got to get money out and you want to pay the least amount of tax possible, right? Like, it's just common sense. You got this IRA, it's your 401k, these things came out in the 80s, replaced the pension. They started filling up. Everyone said, put money in it. They said, don't touch it till you're 70 and a half, although you can touch it at 59 and a half. And you're just kind of confused. You're like, I don't know if I want to pay taxes on it. What should I do? So you avoid it, you work around it, you live around it. And then the tax problems usually compound. So the short version of this is if you wait till 73, which is the new rule, most people run into a couple problems. And those problems are when the first spouse passes, your tax rates can double. We call that the widow's penalty because you go from a couple rate to a single rate, and you have the same IRA size. Now you've inherited both the IRA accounts of both of the dead spouse and the surviving spouse, and you have to take out your RMDs. And unfortunately, because the rates are higher for the single, it hurts you. You can go from possibly paying 10 or 15% as a couple retired rate to 15, 20, 25% as a single. That stinks. Then you have the compounding problem of when the surviving spouse passes, it goes to the kids. They could be in their highest earning years. They don't get taxed at mom and dad's rates. They get taxed at their rates, at the kid rates, which are usually their highest earning years. We call that the kiddos penalty. We've talked about the widows and kiddos penalty at length. You have to avoid that. How do you avoid that? Our IRA tax plan, we build that for all of our clients. And we do that as part of the roadmap, actually. Our team of CPAs helps put it together. We show people what a plan would look like to detax it, usually over 7 to 10 years. It varies. Usually 7 to 10 year plan can detax your IRA completely, whether it be a Roth conversion or just getting it detaxed into after-tax dollars, where you can maintain keeping the most amount of money in your account, not going to Uncle Sam. Waiting till 73 is Uncle Sam's plan, not yours. That's super important. To me, that's numero one. That if we're prioritizing these things, that's the big potato. The second isn't the big potato, but it's also meaningful. It's called capital gains tax loss harvesting. And a lot of people don't think about this. And for people that have all IRA money, it's probably not as relevant because there's no capital gains tax in an IRA account. That's not something to worry about. But if you have after-tax accounts, if you have accounts that aren't IRAs or 401ks, 403bs, et cetera, and they're growing, you have equities or ETFs or indexes. They have all these accounts that go up and down all the time over the course of the year. A cool thing you can do is sell the losing accounts, the dogs, and utilize those losses to apply to your gains. It's pretty neat, right? And over time, like, studies vary. I was trying to find like what the average capital gains loss harvesting savings is over the course of a lifetime. I think they say if it's done well and consistently, they've got studies, I believe on Smart Assets, and I saw on Bloomberg too. They didn't have any definitive things, but it looked like it ranged around 1%. Don't hold me to that, but that seems like, you can grab another 1% over time if you're consistent doing it. If you just do it 1 year in a bubble, it doesn't really work because who knows how many losses you have a year, et cetera. But what you're really doing is you're selling your dogs and you're buying similar accounts and then waiting. And then, I think, you can offset if you have enough losses that offset your gains, or if you have more losses than gains, you can offset up to $3,000 a year of ordinary income, which is pretty cool. If you really liked the stock that was losing that you sold, there's some rules. You can't just sell it and buy it back again the next day. You can't do that, but you can wait 31 days and buy it back. So you can get back into those same securities by capital gains tax loss harvesting. The way we do it is more systematic. It is, my favorite stocks. We have a software system that does it for us. And it basically just tries to maximize tax savings. We're trying to macro pick up pennies throughout the year so that over the end of the year, we can add it up. And I think that's an important thing to do on your non-qualified accounts. It's part of our services. We do it for all of our, we're turning this on and doing it for all of our clients. It's a new service in 2025. We're very excited about it. That's going to be turned over, Leafs, because I know there's people listening and saying, wait a second, what are you talking about? I don't have those services. We know we're testing it now, and it is going to be full blow in 2026. And I think it's a great thing, and it's a value add. It's a way that we can quantify value to our client in the tax world that isn't just investment driven. So if you don't know anything about that, or you have questions about that, that's something great to talk to your financial Sherpa about and dig in a little bit when it comes to your dollars, because I think at the end of the day, pennies can add up to dollars, right? And if you can go over the course of 30 years and you're systematic about it, Randy, I think it can make a big difference in a way that's predictable, as opposed to just crossing your fingers and hoping that NVIDIA grows by 1,000% a year. That doesn't seem like much of a plan. When you have tactical approaches to tax and legal, I think that's where you have some meaningful value-driven opportunities as part of your retirement plan that just didn't come down to stock guessing.
Well, one of the things about this time of year, if you have a financial advisor and you go to them and say, well, what are we going to do about taxes? And they look at you kind of funny and give you a business card and say, I don't do that, but I got a guy for that. Well, at Golden Reserve, we have the people for that, and we don't have to go across town in order to do that. And that's all a part of our roadmap for retirement. The IRA tax map is a part of what we will do. And in my opinion, a retirement plan really isn't a retirement plan without a tax plan. So let's sit down and talk through that way to save you money as well. Okay, so I went to the grocery store to see in the Hallmark card area if there was a card for Life Insurance Awareness Month. And Greg, I came up empty. There's just no card for Life Insurance Awareness Month. This month is Life Insurance Awareness Month, which is pretty amazing. And I want to bring this up a little bit because this is the experience that I had going from my late 50s into my 60s. Most of us as parents, you bought a term policy for your kids because if you were to, box out, in your 40s or 50s, you would have something that would help your family along the way. But then that lasted for about 25 or 30 years. Now, you go, what do I do about insurance when I'm in my 60s, 70s, and 80s and 90s? Do I need a term policy? Do I need something else? Look at the cost. So, Greg, how is insurance a part of a retirement plan for people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s as they move through that time when their kids are all grown up and we don't have to worry about that part of it anymore?
Yeah, I mean, insurance is kind of a dying investment in a lot of ways. Whole life insurance and universal life insurance and all these type of products used to be very prevalent in the 80s and 90s. It was a big deal to have those. I think people invested heavily, kind of like the bond market in a lot of ways, right? It used to be a much larger part of the investment conversation. And unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know, it just kind of has faded over the last 10 or 15 years. And I think a lot of that in part is just due to the market. Mm-hmm. The market has been performing so exceptionally. People don't want to miss out and they don't want to not have their money in these investment, areas. And I think you can think of insurance in two buckets, Randy. It's either a risk mitigation tool or it's an investment. And, for higher net worth individuals, trust me when I tell you this, rich people own insurance for a reason. A lot of very rich people own insurance. It's expensive at times, but one of the biggest benefits of insurance is that it passes tax-free to the next generation. So if you pay into a policy for 20 or 30 years and it accumulates and it grows and does all this fun stuff, and then it ends up passing on, that death benefit that comes out is tax-free. There's not a lot of other investments that do that. And I think that's one appealing part of using insurance. Now, do I think insurance is for everyone? No. And, some people just don't, it's just not part of their goals. It's not part of their journey. So you have to understand what the journey is for a lot of people. And I think one of those things is I want to make sure a certain amount of money is set aside to take care of my special need child or my special need grandchild. Do I think insurance is important? Yeah, it could be, because now you can lock it in to a single premium. You can make sure that that money's there no matter what. Whether you go in a nursing home, you make bad financial decisions, the stock market goes up and down, you know that that money's set aside for the care of your child because you know it's required. As estate planning attorneys, that was something that we saw a lot of, where people were ensuring, hey, I got to make sure this money's set aside for my kid or my grandkid because they're going to need it. Well, then insurance could be a great option, right? You could set it away and be done with it. If you think that you're going to, have other limitations or you want it to be even, you can use insurance to pay that off. So, every grandkid gets an insurance policy. There's ways you can do this, and it could be a tool. I know when we used asset protection trusts, those are trusts that protect your assets from the nursing home. So a lot of times people use these where once you get the asset outside of your estate for more than 5 years, the nursing home can't touch it. It was very popular to use single premium insurance, which is pay one time, and now this policy pays no matter what to the said beneficiaries. Now, the cool part about this is I always tell people, do you think you're going to need this money? No. All right, well, then insurance could be an option. It may not be the right option, but if you're like, hey, you think you may need this money? You probably don't want to sock away insurance policies, right? Like, this is a luxury add-on that can have some cool tax benefits, some stability benefits, but it's not for everyone. And for us, it almost is always tied with legal. When people are talking about insurance, it's about a, second to die policy, maybe to go to the grandkids or the kids, or it's about gift taxing or estate tax planning, or it's about taking care of a kid or in conjunction with a beneficiary of a trust. All of that stuff ties to the use of insurance. So if I put my estate planning attorney hat on, that's where I think I see insurance the most. Maybe other people's practices are different. I don't know. But like in our experience, it is a predictable tool, which is why people like it. It does what it says it's going to do. You're paying for a promise that's predictable. No different than annuity, a CD, other things. Sometimes people want to pay a premium for predictability and certainty, and insurance checks those boxes. Is it right for everyone? No, but I think that's why you got to build a plan and see what you're trying to do. And that's why we involve our attorneys in all of our plans, because I think if you don't have the legal piece taken care of, you're missing the last part of retirement mountain, the most important part of where your stuff goes and how it's transferred and what the tax ramifications are and all of those things. A lot of times people just fall asleep at the wheel and they're like, whatever, the kids will take care of it. And it's kind of a circus, and things get screwed up and lawyers get involved and all kinds of nasty stuff and taxes, where if you have your attorneys buttoned up, when that worst day of your life happens and you get that phone call, that person helps guide you through that tough situation, whether it be a nursing home situation or a passing of a loved one. That's the real benefit of an estate planning attorney. I know people are like, I can get a will online for $18. I'm like, well, good luck. Because when mom or dad goes in a nursing home, who are you going to call? When someone passed away, who are you going to call? We're actually their first or second phone call. And we're there not to be just the legal support. We're the emotional support. We're the ones that help facilitate. We understand the funeral. We understand the dynamics of Medicare versus Medicaid if they go in a nursing home. That is actually the superpower in what you're paying for when you build that relationship. It isn't a piece of paper, and it isn't a ChatGPT description on how to distribute your assets. It's a human that will humanize and be there for you and help you navigate that tough day. That's the magic, and that's why we involve attorneys in every plan, because at the end of Retirement Mountain, it's not just about getting the distributions right and making sure it goes to the right people. It's to make their lives easier. It's to make a terrible situation a little less terrible. And I think that is what most people in the financial industry miss. That's what most people in life miss, that you don't really know what you're missing until you don't have it. And I think when you're trying to navigate that dark time alone, Googling and chat GPTing, well, what happens at the funeral? Or what happens with Medicaid versus Medicare? Or what happens with VA benefits? All of those things are why the attorney's there and why they're part of every roadmap we build, Randy. They are a cornerstone of retirement planning because they help us deal with the problems. You're not paying for what happens, the will and trust just does everything. No. An attorney's there for the moments where you have to break the glass. And I think that is why, if they're not part of your retirement plan, you don't have a retirement plan.
Yeah, there are moments in our lives in many shapes and fashions where we go, what do I do now? For me, one of those moments was when my term policy ran out in my insurance. What do I do now? Another moment was when my mom went into long-term care, into memory care. What do I do now? Who do I go to? Who's going to help me? That is real life. And that is real life retirement issues. And that is what the roadmap for retirement is built on, real retirement issues. Let's get them all out on the table, and let's work through all of these different difficulties that you might have in your retirement years. It's called a roadmap for retirement. We'll do one for you at no charge or obligation. GetYourRoadmap.com. That's GetYourRoadmap.com. Okay, last week on the show, we were talking about your 401k and something that might pop up in your 401k this year or maybe next year, and that is the idea that Bitcoin, IPOs, private equity, there's some new things that might pop up, and they might pop up inside your target date fund, and then you wouldn't even know it's there because it's inside that fund. So as we did the show, Greg went off on private equity and how it probably doesn't have a place in your 401k. But now I found out, Greg, where the people are who are going to do this. And it's your favorite two words in the world, BlackRock. They are considering putting IPOs and Bitcoin and private equity inside their target date fund. So I just thought I would tell you that, and they want to charge an extra. What they say is could increase your annual return by 0.5%.
Deep breaths, some belly breathing. The world's good. Everyone's happy. Unicorns and rainbows. Do not get my blood pressure under 200. Check, check, check. All right. So I'm going to attack this from a number standpoint and from a reality standpoint. So, I was thinking about this, and you know what jumped out at me is, Americans are so good at being sold on things they want to believe, but deep down, no, it's not true. It's like pita pit. Everyone knows that it's not good for you, but it's fake healthy. You're like, no, I got a pita pit. You're like, that Caesar wrap has 4,000 calories in it. And then you're like, well, no. You go to the restaurant. I remember my dad, God love Big John. He went to BJ's Pizza or something. He's like, Greg, you'd be so proud of me. I got the Alfredo pasta. I'm like, Dad, just so you know, that had 500 more calories than the pepperoni pizza. It was about 2,500 for that serving. And we love fake healthy, right? Like we love the idea of things that we think are good for us. The acai bowl. Remember those acai bowls?
Yeah.
They were a rave for a decade. Everybody's like, it's just sugar ice cream. Really? I know it's fancy. No, it helps your joints. It also causes diabetes. So congratulations. So these are the things that Americans love. We love things that we know, nothing that tastes that good can be good for you. We just have to accept the fact that delicious stuff is bad for us. It's just the way the world works. So 401ks are one of those things that we think are good for us, right? It's like, you know what? Socking away stuff in my 401k. Look at my account balance. It's growing. And you're excited and you're pumped and you're like, this is so good for me. And really what this is a prison for your money. It's a prison that only sells crackers and warm water for lunch and dinner. And they do this because they know you're not paying attention. They know that you're 40 years away from touching it. So why not bury a bunch of fees and obnoxious things in there that they can sell everything to? You know what this is? This is Pita Pit. Hey guys, I got something that's good for you. It's in a pita. I don't really know what pita is, but it sounds exotic and healthy. All right. So I will explain to this, 401ks are notorious. I mean, we've done so many shows about their fees. So let's not get into those. We know the fees are high. And the fees are high because I want to spend more time on the statistical reality. And I was trying to find these numbers, and maybe they were scrubbed from the web. I don't know. But I was like, how many people die with a 401k? And the data I could find was like, we can't track this, or we don't know specifically, but a lot. The majority of people that have a 401k die with a 401k balance. And that begs the question, why? And we talked about the tax planning earlier. I'm not going to talk about that again. But I think it's fascinating that when you're 73 years old and you finally get to the required minimum draw, and the government's like, we need our money back. They say we need 3.7%. That's the number, 3.7%. That's definitely not exceeding most money market. So your 401k is definitely not getting better. And you ask yourself, why don't they want more money back faster? If you had a bank, they're like, no, take your time. I mean, Randy, do you have a bank that says, pay me back when you feel like it?
No.
That means that something's happening where they want to keep your money in the system longer. It's inarguable. And it's things like this nonsense from BlackRock that are charging, private equity costs, IPOs. You think those are going to come with small fees? Oh, you got bigger return possibilities, but we got to charge you 3%. And it's like, these are the things that drive me crazy, where they just basically say, look over here, and they're taking money out of your pocket over here. So just to exacerbate this point of how prisonary, I made up that word, 401ks are for your money, at 80, you only have to take out 4.95% of your money. At 80, that's 2 years past the life expectancy of an American. 4.95%. That is barely getting to some CD rates. And at 90, 8.9%, Randy. 9%. This is got to be alarm. I'm sorry, 8.19%. I can't read my handwriting. And this to me is the secret that no one wants to talk about. The 401ks are so out of your mind in retirement because a lot of times you start living around them because you don't want to pay tax on it. That's the trick. I don't want to pay tax. So I'm going to leave them in there. So I forget about it. And as long as it's going up a little bit, I don't care. Well, that's where all the fees are getting churned out. So I implore you, if you have a 401k or IRA balance, or you're in a 401k plan in one of these old, sponsored plans that you worked at, take a peek at it. Let us run a fee filter on it. Let us run a market risk report on to see what the risk is going on, how much money can go backwards, and how much are you paying in your 401k. We do it at no charge, Randy. And hopefully it sheds some light on some of these expenses, and you can switch for more economical investments and hopefully stay away from these pricier ones.
So many of us have a 401k, a 403b, and an IRA. And these are things that we bring to retirement. And you want to know what's going on in there. Yeah, maybe you don't have this big portfolio with also stocks and ETFs and all these different things. Okay, you want to know what's going on inside of that 401k. And is it going to help you in retirement? And how is it going to help you in retirement? Let's get you those answers. GetYourRoadmap.com is our website for our roadmap for retirement. We'll build one for you, no cost, no obligation. Just kind of wrapping up the show today, Greg, when we talk about people who come in to see you, there is a moment when they discover, hey, I can retire. People come into that meeting and they go, I don't know if I'm emotionally ready. I don't know if my money is ready. And there's all sorts of reasons for people saying, I don't know if I can retire. When you sit down with people and the money looks right, you kind of give them the green light, the thumbs up. You can retire if you want to. Does that change a lot of people's minds? Because I know there are a lot of us are just really connected to our jobs. We don't want to give that up. We don't want to give our friends and our coworkers up. And I don't know what I'm going to do if I'm not going in 9 to 5 each day. That really bothers me. But if you tell them that the money is right, does that change the conversation at all?
I think so. I think it's a process, though. I don't think it's a binary. We say it's okay, and then they're like, okay, I'm ready.
Okay.
I think it's a process. I think retirement is a process, just like everything. Any big decision in life, you have to sell yourself on it, and then you have to get comfortable with it. And how do you sell yourself on it? Well, some people it's emotional, and they just operate on all emotion. Some people it's empirical, it's data, it's evidence, it's proof. Some people it's both. So how do we touch on all those different pieces? That's where the roadmap comes in, Randy. We sit there and we try to say, all right, how do we convince this person after 20, 25, 30 years of socking away money, they're safe? Because the industry goofballs out there like Fisher or Edelman or Susie Orman or who knows who's making up numbers saying you have to have a magic number to retire, and it's scaring them and it's breaking that confidence. And the way that we combat that propaganda is we try to make it simple and say, all right, here's the 4 biggest risks in retirement: fees, taxes, market risk, and long-term care. These are the things that we believe in our world can most adversely affect your retirement and your enjoyment of retirement. Let's do a test. Let's do a litmus test to see how you perform in each of these 4 areas. That is our roadmap. It is a, oil check of your retirement or your retirement readiness. And it says, hey, this looks good. This could use a little work. This one could use a lot of work. This could use, this is good to go. And then each of the 4 areas. We then couple it with the income forecast to then show you, now that we have it protected or not protected, you know where you're at against these big risks. What's your income look like if you spend the same amount you did last year for the rest of your retirement for the next 25 years? And let's throw in some inflation, some healthcare costs, some travel. And then what does that look? That is the confidence booster. That's the emotional piece, Randy. And I know there's some data there, but it's more emotional. The roadmap boulders, fees, taxes, market risk, long-term care are all tactical. The income forecast is emotional, where it's like, you're going to be safe. Look at this. In 25 years, you're going to have more money. You can actually spend more. You can have more fun. And then they're like, I don't know. I'm going to use you guys. And then a year later, we run the income forecast again, and it gets bigger. And we start chipping away at that fear. And by removing that fear and uncertainty with certainty and numbers, they have more fun. That's how most baby boomers make decisions. And I think that's how we got to where we are today, is by saying, let's put our money where our mouth is and not just tell retirees that we want them to spend more money and enjoy retirement, but let's show them and then encourage them to spend more money and enjoy their retirement. And by doing that, we have a lot more fun with our job, and the retirees have a lot more fun using us. So that's really the heartbeat of the roadmap and why we give it away at no cost and hopefully get people excited, because even if they don't use us, hopefully they use the tools and go have some more fun in retirement.
You know, earlier in the show, if you weren't with us, we had some interesting stats. One of them was many people in retirement retire with double what they started with. Some people 5 times what they started with. Some people don't get into their principal until 18 years into their retirement. Why is that? It's because we go into this and we're afraid to spend money. And what Greg talks about is that emotional moment when you look at that income planning and say, wow, I can replace my paycheck. I can retire. There's enough money there. Now you make your decision. Now you make a decision to walk away from work or go back to work, whatever you want to do. Let's have that data for you. That is what the roadmap for retirement is. Give us a look on our website, real easy, getyourroadmap.com. We thank you so much for listening today. Have a great weekend, and we will be here next week. We hope you will be too on Fire Your Financial Advisor.